Hi friends! The goal of this video is to have a cozy chat about whether you, in real life, would choose to be friends with Delita Heiral of Final Fantasy Tactics. Giving you a heads up that this vlog will be full of spoilers for the game, so you should probably click off now if you haven't played all the way through. But that being said, we're only going to focus on Chapter 1 Delita for the time being. There will probably be future videos where I chat with you about Delita in Chapters 2 through 4, so go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you want to see that. For now, I hope you've gotten comfortable somewhere with a drink or a snack, because FFT is definitely my comfort game, and I want you to be cozy while chatting with me about it. Alright, so determining whether Chapter 1 Delita is the kind of guy that you would actually hang out with in real life. Let's think about the earliest that we get to see him, when he's just finishing up the Garland Academy training with Ramza, where I would say personality-wise here, Delita is like 16 going on 35. This guy is already so jaded in comparison to Ramza, and we see that as we go through Chapter 1, but even right there in that first scene, we see Ramza sort of oblivious to what's going on in the world around him and really how much danger they're all in. And Delita knows so much more than Ramza does about all of this, who's involved, what sort of threats are happening around them. But Delita, he's still really kind of chilled out about it. Like, he handles Ramza really well, just sort of like, okay, well, I'll give you some information, thinking to himself like that you should have already known, but Delita's still really nice to him. You can tell that he cares about Ramza and sees him as a good friend, and even though Delita seems kind of jaded, he isn't a jerk about it at this point in the game. We know that he's had kind of a hard time of things. In at least the first version of the game, they tell us that Delita's family were horse farmers, or god, is farmers even the right word? I don't know. They raised horses, but then I believe it was Eviluse's version of the plague took out Delita and Teacher's parents, leaving them orphaned, and Ramza's father ended up taking in the Heiral children. So Delita has a really weird station in life for a world like this, because they have a really strong dividing line between nobility and commoner. Like, you're one or the other. There isn't really a middle class here. So making Delita basically Ramza's trusted closest friend is a strange choice in this world on the part of Ramza's father, because Delita really doesn't have the status to deserve that role in a world like this. Not saying that's my opinion, just in a world like that, a commoner generally wouldn't be given that sort of opportunity. So it leaves Delita in a really odd place where he's basically Ramza's servant, but also his friend. They never make it clear, like, does Delita even get paid, or is he just basically enslaved to the Beowulfs? It's a really odd position for him to be in, and the game makes that clear over and over again. But at least in my opinion, that probably explains a lot of why Delita is so knowledgeable and still sort of quiet and humble about what he does know, because he's in a really weird role in life, and he probably knows that it's really precarious. Like, he has a place because Ramza lets him have a place. If one day Ramza got tired of having Delita around and was like, you know what, I don't want you as my sidekick anymore, like, Delita would have nowhere to go, nothing to fall back on. He and his sister are just completely dependent on Beowulf charity. So that might also partly explain why Delita is so very patient with Ramza's naivete in the beginning of the game. He is just, well, he's a pretty faithful sidekick in the beginning, and I mean, given that he's only 16, I guess he hasn't had much time and opportunity to question why he's okay with his role. It's just sort of in no man's land, not a noble, not a commoner, just acting like, basically like the role that a knight would have. It's like someone who would normally be of the nobility who's been knighted, would normally have the sort of role that Delita's given, you know, being the right-hand man of an important nobleman. But Delita, he handles it well, and I have to say, there at the beginning when we meet Delita, and he's just, like, very chilled out, very calm. He knows what they're about to face with the battle they're about to go into, but he still kind of keeps a level head, and it's pretty impressive for someone that young. Like, Delita seems like a really good dude at the beginning of the game. Like, definitely give him a point here for he seems like someone you would want to be friends with and would want to hang out with. Now, I'm going to talk about events out of order because I feel like every video I see on YouTube about tactics is always in exactly chronological order, like, okay, then this happened, and then this happened. And I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I don't know, I just kind of want to randomly talk about the game, and that is going to mean that I won't be doing it completely in chronological order. I'll be talking in whatever order things pop into my head. So, the next point that I wanted to bring up with Delita, when I was thinking about him just sort of providing information for Ramza and being helpful to Ramza, but for the most part keeping his opinions to himself, later on, after the events at Dorder, when they capture the prisoner from the Corpse Brigade, and Algus / Ardath, whatever you like to call him, he is, you know, brutally torturing the prisoner to get information out of him. And Ramza is understandably disgusted, but Delita, he's just leaned against a wall over on the other side of the room, and like, you can kind of, it's like you can hear Delita's thoughts there, like, oh my god, I'm just gonna sit it out while these nobles do whatever the hell they're gonna do. Like, Delita, the only time he really speaks in that scene is when people need information. Delita just, he explains who Gustav is when these two nobles have no idea who Gustav is. And then he explains more about geographical locations when the two nobles have no idea and need someone to explain it to them. And, I mean, when you look at it that way, it kind of makes me laugh. Like, Delita's basically just, like, at this point, an encyclopedia for his rich, lazy friends who don't bother to learn anything. And Delita has to sort of fill those gaps for them because he is in that role as their trusted servant and sort of advisor. But yeah, Delita's still at it at that point in the game, playing his role there. And I mean, I don't love that he just sits back and watches Algus torture that prisoner. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like if it were me, I would have intervened sooner than even Ramza did, but I mean, I'm not expecting Delita to be me, and plus this is, you know, a vicious world that most of us aren't really accustomed to, so I guess I can't really say what I would do in Delita's shoes. But either way, I see where he's coming from, and from that scene, yeah, I would be Delita's friend. He's a good guy. Next, let's look at when we first rescue Algus from the Corpse Brigade. So, if you remember, he's, like, down on the ground, and the Corpse Brigade are wondering what they have to do with this one guy who has survived the attack, and that's when Ramza and his crew come along, and Ramza is posed with the question of whether or not to save Algus, and as the player you get to choose whether you want to prioritize saving him or you just want to prioritize winning the battle. But you see that whatever choice you make, either way, Delita would have his heart set on trying to save this person who he assumes is innocent and is at the mercy of these brigands. And you really see, like, Delita is a very kind, thoughtful person at this point in his life. Like, he's willing to put his own life on the line for this stranger who, you know, is helpless, I guess, at the time. So, yeah, I mean, from that scene, Delita gets another mark in the yep column. I would be Delita's friend. He seems like a stand-up guy at this point in Chapter 1. When we get further along in the chapter, though, after Delita's sister Tetra has been kidnapped, we see, I don't know, I guess Delita sort of, he's been pushed, I would say, to the point where he can't just play the silent, knowledgeable best friend / advisor anymore. He's, his own personal life has been really disrupted at this point, and he's very upset and afraid he's going to lose his sister. And at this point, Ramza is kind of just, I guess in my opinion, not showing enough concern for the fact that Delita's sister has been abducted. Ramza just kind of has this attitude of, oh, surely it will be okay, Delita, don't worry about it. And Delita, understandably is like, are you effing kidding me? How can you tell me not to worry about it? And Ramza at one point basically tells him to calm down. And at that point, Delita starts strangling Ramza. And, gosh, like, as far as ranking Delita on is he good friend material or not, that's a tough one because, at least from my perspective, I wouldn't strangle one of my friends because of something they said. I think most people can agree with that. Like, there's just no need to take it there with someone who at least means well. But, yeah, Delita goes there. He throttles Ramza for not seeming concerned enough and seeming a little bit callous toward him. But I'm hesitant to take a whole point off for that, because I kind of understand, like, Delita's very young, and on top of that, like, this is his one remaining relative who is probably about to die, and Ramza can't show some appropriate fear to kind of show Delita, like, hey, I'm here with you, like, I'm scared too, like, I care about her too. Ramza's just kind of like, yeah, that sucks, maybe she'll be alright though, don't worry about it, Delita. And, Delita kind of loses it and puts hands on Ramza. And I guess, like, given that I'm doing a rating scale for would I be friends with this person, I'm going to only take off half a point from Delita for this one. I feel like I can't take off a full point because I totally get it. Like, I can't even imagine being in that situation where you only have one relative left and this has happened to them. So, yeah, I'm just taking half a point off here from Delita. I still think he's overall a good person, but he loses a bit of cred in the friend department for the throttling thing. Then I guess the last thing that really stands out to me about Chapter 1 Delita is at the end of the chapter, after Algus murders his sister and Delita is understandably very upset, and he's pretty much just raging against all of the nobility at this point, everyone who just didn't care enough, and everyone who threw his sister to her death, basically, including, Ramza's brother Zalbag, who gave Algus the order to shoot, and Ramza, who didn't really, I don't want to blame Ramza here, but, Ramza wasn't in that much of a hurry, I guess I would say. He absolutely was there for Delita, and he did everything he could, but I guess his attitude toward it wasn't as concerned and as rushed as it probably would have been if it had been Ramza's own sister who had been abducted. So Delita is furious at this point, and he's, just about ready to cut the head off anybody who has a little bit of nobility about them. So he starts screaming, at Algus, but he also yells at Ramza, "You're next," after Algus. So Delita is, obviously not fully in his right mind at this point. Like, he just saw his last remaining family member get murdered. So, that's rough. Delita had a pretty terrible time of it in Chapter 1. So, I can see why he's yelling at Ramza. Like, I understand it. And it's really sad because Ramza, at least I think Ramza meant well and, like, always meant to be a good friend to Delita. He just didn't really understand how sometimes. And Delita's reaction, threatening to kill Ramza for the way things played out, and I guess basically at this point just I'm sure, a build-up too of like, Ramza, you've always been so naive. Ramza, you've never made an effort to understand what's going on around us and to protect the people who are under you. And, you know, it's all come to a head for Delita. He's furious and he wants to lash out at everybody who might be responsible for the loss of his sister and basically even the loss of the Corpse Brigade, just everyone who has been trampled on by the nobility throughout this chapter. So, as far as it goes with Delita threatening to kill Ramza, his best friend, I am just not awarding any points here. Like, I don't know, I guess from my point of view, I think it's not fair to judge at that scene. Like, I feel like it's really just not fair to judge anything Delita says or does at that point in time, considering what he's going through and all that trauma. So, overall, we have Delita with a winning score for Chapter 1. Overall, I think he was a thoughtful, kind friend, and anyone in real life would probably be really lucky to be friends with Delita. What do you think? Let me know, if you've watched this far, let me know in the comments. Did your score come out the same as mine for each of these points? Would you be friends with Delita in real life? And do you agree or disagree with me on any of these points? Like, whether I guess the descriptions of why I think Delita behaved the way he did, if you have a different point of view, I'd like to hear about it, because I really love this game. And I love to hear other people's points of view on basically every little part of it. So please leave me a comment if you want to, and let me know what you think. And I guess that's really all I wanted to say about Delita in this video, but if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll try to make more videos about the other Final Fantasy Tactics characters, because I could talk about them all day. Thanks for listening to me ramble about Delita, and I'll talk to you later.